Erased Destiny. Chapter 5. An Eye for an Eye. Torden took his horse from the stable. He was glad he didn't have lessons arranged, as he could spend the day chasing bandits, although he would have preferred to nail down a new bookcase to replace the one chewed up by woodworms. He admired Merigold's stubbornness and resourcefulness, but was troubled by her recklessness and self-confidence. He didn't know how to talk to her, so as not to expose himself to death's visits. Merigold stopped just before the forest. She didn't know what to do. How could she find those that had attacked her family? How could she avenge her father? She sat down on a boulder and tried to recreate the sensation of drowning in cold darkness.
You do not need to be terrified to talk to me. It is enough to call me out.
I am sorry, I didn't know. Who are you, and why do you live inside of me?
That is a very good question. My name is Etienne. I am, or rather, was the 9th Lady of the Crystal Palace, Empress of the Desert Empire, highest mage of death, mind and frozen flames. I have died, in fact, I have died many times, but that time, the last time, I have lost my body, everything. I don't know why I woke up here, neither how to free myself. Therefore, you need to bear with me for the time being.
Merigold considered herself very lucky. Not only she had a powerful ally, that ally was unable of abandoning her.
Could you help me with those bandits?
Why should I? Chasing after such lowlifes is not a duty of the Lady of the Crystal Palace. I have other things to do. The most important one, except of finding my beloved Nathan, is to find a body more suitable to be my vessel. You lack power, lack magical abilities. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be able to cast any spells. That is not your fault. You were just born this way, but you do not fit my plans.
To do any of those things you need to take control over my body, am I right? How about this, you help me deal with problems and we share the time fairly. Till you find that better weasel.
Vessel, not weasel. So we do have an agreement. If you want me to find and eliminate group of armed men, you need to stand down. Remain passive till everything is over.
On horseback, Torden caught up with Merigold just at the beginning of the forest. The girl was looking around her, as if she herself wasn't sure what she was actually looking for.
Do you have a plan?
3. But first we need to locate the camp. I'll use mind magic if you watch over my body.
Before you fly, eat a piece of sausage. Sorcery is very tiring, huh? For every thug delivered to Centra's watchtower, you would fetch head money. What do you think?
Worth to consider, although it is more difficult to stun somebody with magic than to kill them. I need to think about it. But first of all, I need to find them.
Torden pulled Merigold onto the horse. All the time he tried to remember that it was not Merigold, but the Lady of the Crystal Palace sitting in the saddle in front of him. A powerless, weakened, and amnesia-stricken ruler who knows no fear, never avoids fighting, and above all, never thinks of her own safety. Etienne casted Phantom Body and flashed ahead. It had been a long time since she had felt as if she was daydreaming. She looked down at her motionless body, held by the hand of a warrior. The horse was riding along a comfortable path, completely ignoring the death aura of one of its passengers. Merigold flew through trees, birds, and even animals. She enjoyed her newfound powers, but they brought a weariness she had never known before. Etienne waited for Merigold to notice that she was supposed to hide and not to fly above the forest, using skills of mages that ruled over the world even before Etienne. Etienne couldn't remember by whose hand she died. But since it had happened, her powers had failed her. Her opponents proved to be stronger or smarter than her, and that was reason enough to keep her existence a secret until she regained her memories. After several minutes, Etienne found a wild encampment by a stream. She checked a big tent that contained only crates and barrels. She walked through fire without touching raw meat, waiting for preparation. She counted all bandits, but she couldn't see Abella's sheep or any other animals. After Etienne came up with a plan, she returned to the body. She noticed a leather pouch that could contain something useful.
In the camp, they have a cart. We will put the bodies on it and take them to the city. Did you take any potions?
Pillars gave them to me. Take them if you like. Blonde won't pull the cart. It is a war horse, not used to carry anything except of me.
It is not a problem. I could summon animals, for sure. I will recall the incantation.
Etienne reviewed potions brought by Torden and adjusted her plan. She asked Torden to stop. In a bowl, created with her magic, only she mixed 3 mixtures. The smell was so awful that Torden covered his nose and mouth with piece of cloth.
So what is your plan?
Very simple. I throw the elixir to the fire. It produces smoke so toxic and suffocating that bandits run away. I counted 9 of them. You stand opposite to the river, far from the fire, and stun anyone who tries to pass you. I would hunt on the riverbank, if anyone chooses that route. All other places I cover with traps.
9 people, you say? Then you don't need to dirty your hands. I would have cleaned up that camp long ago if I had time to chase it. You did a great job as a tracker, and that's enough for today.
The broad, not at all human, smile on Merigold's face awakened the warrior's worst fears. His concern was not to effectively stun his enemies or avoid severe injuries, but to keep an eye on the overconfident girl so she doesn't hurt herself.
In the camp, I'm sure you'll find many useful items. And of course money, although I think we'll get more for the bodies.
The looting expedition appealed to Merigold more than to Torden or Etienne. A few pieces of silver, for a warrior, was not unusual, but to a poor 12-year-old it appeared like a chest full of treasure. She waved her hand. Nothing appeared.
Ah, now someone else wields my sword. Shadow Wanderer.
Etienne was glad that in her youth she spent a lot of time mastering alchemy. She sneaked into the camp, hidden in the shadows. She planned to use illusions to guide enemies towards Torden or to scare them away. She could make bandits fall asleep, but nothing more. She carried potion of power regeneration in her bag and other one, werewolf's mixture of regeneration in case someone hurt her. Before Etienne could make her move, Torden entered the camp and shouted that he wants to duel all of those thugs. Etienne sighed. There was not even one fight in her whole life that would go according to the plan. Every time if warriors accompanied her, they listened to no one. And afterwards, Etienne had to burn their dead bodies. Because Torden came too close to the fire, Etienne couldn't use the poison. If she had her sword, she would join the fight. Unarmed, she used sleep charm to reduce number of enemies. Her worn-out shoes fell apart in the worst moment when she tried to escape from the battlefield. Sudden sword attack. Etienne blocked with a scythe, but force of the blow knocked the girl over. Ice dragon armor did not appear, not even ice shield or sphere of water. Only the poison ivy helped her and tied the bandit up. Unfortunately, it didn't stop an arrow that pierced Merigold's body. Etienne pretended to be dead till the end of the fight. Nothing worked out. Her magic failed her. Torden didn't listen to her. Nathan didn't protect her. She was alone. More alone than on her throne.
Are you all right? That wound doesn't look lethal.
I am fine. It is just a scratch. No need to use a werewolf potion, but I really need to buy new shoes.
You have earned enough to buy even the most expensive shoes, that is for sure. We have 8 senseless thugs here and 1 cold body. The cart is big enough to take them all to Sintra, but we lack horses.
The dark lines of the horizon touch the water, and there I see the reflection of your snouts.
Torden thought that Merigold felt bad, but strange sentence appeared to be a magical incantation, summoning black, terribly skinny horses. Etienne whistled and the steeds ran up to her, and politely stood next to the drawbar of the cart. They stood there motionless while Torden put the harness on them. Meanwhile, Etienne searched the bodies of the unconscious men and the rest of the camp. The girl did not find the sheep, but the money collected far exceeded the amount looted. She sat on one of the black steeds and led the horse cart. Torden walked beside her. He had no desire to mount the terrifyingly skinny yet remarkably strong mount. The gnawed bones of baked animals laid in a pile at the edge of the camp, with Abella's unfortunate sheep probably among them. Merigold sighed. Her mother was very fond of that sheep.
I will settle the account with the guard. Wait for me in the House of Magic.
I prefer to return home as soon as possible. I think it would be better to leave all the loot in your house.
So let's do it this way. We go together to my house, leave the loot there, then go to the watchtower, I do the exchange and ride you home. Does it sound good?
The girl's pale face stretched into a smile at the thought of more riches. The prospect of quitting her job at the dyer's and taking up something more pleasant and also income-generating, such as hunting bandits, improved Merigold's mood. In the middle of doing business with guards, Merigold fell asleep. She sat on the stone bench next to the watchtower and stayed there. Without thinking too much, Torden carried Merigold to the stables and took his horse. From there, he rode to Wolfsrome, where Ryglan and Abella lived. He told them how Merigold questioned the guards in the town to determine the perpetrators of the attack, how she found a camp of bandits impersonating guards in the woods, and how Torden finished off the robbers to receive a reward. He gave half of the money he had earned to Merigold's parents and kept the other half to cover unexpected expenses related to guarding the not quite as conscious ruler. Instead of having dinner, Torden visited the bandits' camp again in search of items overlooked during the day but valuable. When Jargon saw Torden passing nearby, he wondered for a moment if he had forgotten some lesson. He looked up at the darkening sky and decided it was impossible. He never trained after dark. Jargon went back to analyzing the corrections the city's architect had made on his winery project. Jargon enjoyed his lessons, more than even the most enjoyable desserts, and definitely more than learning how to walk straight. He had hoped that the grandmother of etiquette would help him overcome his shyness. Meanwhile, the lessons were limited to holding cutlery properly, eating desserts in the right order, and moving with grace, or rather dignity. In the torture, together with Jargon, participated 2 more boys, just like him, insensitive to the nuances of correct behavior. And the main teaching aid was a thin stick, used by the grandmother to point out shortcomings. Read from erasures and corrections, the sheet of paper made it clear to the boy how much he still had to learn. The wrong thickness of the supports, the wrong angle of the roof, the windows too big and on the wrong side, the basement too shallow, the wrong width of the step. The dust on the road had long since settled before Jargon was struck by the unusualness of Torden's presence. The warrior didn't visit anyone in Wolfsrome except Jargon. He never did so at dinner time. Driven by curiosity, the boy put down the building plan and quietly slipped out of the house. He followed the footsteps of the horseshoes all the way to Merigold's yard. After a brief hesitation, he jumped the fence and snuck under the kitchen window. He hoped that in the semi-darkness, no one would spot him. Abella and Ryglan were animatedly discussing the money lying on the table. Jargon guessed that the sudden cash inflow was somehow related to Merigold, But the girl's parents were more interested in how to use the coins than dithering over the source of the income. Jargon walked to the back of the house and crouched under Merigold's window. The room was quiet, so he glanced inside. He saw the girl lying on the bed in just her shirt, so he hastily averted his eyes. The scars left by the tri-head disfigured Merigold's face, but it seemed to Jargon that new scars had appeared next to it. Courage and recklessness had characterized Merigold from an early age, but so far the girl had not risked her own life or health. Not counting a broken finger, nothing dangerous had happened to her. Since she took a job in Sintra, not only did Jargon hardly see her at all, she came home battered every now and then. The boy promised himself to have a serious talk with Merigold at the earliest opportunity. As long as he resists her spells. Jargon possessed a talent for magic, something Merigold had always been impressed with. He could enroll in the school, study with kids similar to him, and one day become a mage. Perhaps sooner than a vineyard would be built, before Merigold would forever leave Wolfsrome to pursue her dreams. But somehow, Jargon was sure that it was not for him. Jargon didn't know what to do with his life, but certainly he didn't want to parade in a colorful robe, pretending to be someone extremely important. He didn't dream about the life of a soldier, many months in the palace, a few days in the family house. He didn't want to fight, didn't want to risk his life for someone else's goals. He wondered what to do with his life, until the grayness of the early morning reminded him that he should have been in his bed long ago.